In this video, we'll be discussing the application process and how I used to handle it. Now, of course, as a disclaimer, be sure to, I would strongly recommend checking with an attorney on the current leasing requirements so that you don't fall into a bad place with fair housing, HUD, um, Division or the Department of Human Rights within New York State, because these rules do change. Even in the time that I was handling the leasing process, there were a number of different laws passed within the state of New York that really made it more challenging and really required you to sort of stay on your toes so you don't run afoul of any of these agencies. Because if you do, get a letter from Fair Housing or get a letter from the Department of Human Rights, it does require quite an investment in time on your behalf to ensure that you kind of navigate those waters successfully without getting into some serious trouble. But I'll explain the way that I was previously handling the application process. We had a standard application that we provided. Information consisted of full name, date of birth, current address, requesting references, employment information. Yes, we did do background and credit checks. It's my understanding that you're actually not allowed to even consider prior evictions when processing an application these days. But again, worthwhile checking with a legal professional on that. But we would have a first come, first serve process, and we would clearly state that in writing that it's a first come, first serve. And the reason being because on numerous occasions, we would have two people that we would approve, and it would just be the person who got to our office first after being approved with the security deposit. And then, of course, the person who didn't get it because they didn't get there in time would be upset, and you really need to have two things to fall back on. Just a fair and equitable, treatment of all parties involved. Treat all applicants equally. It's got to be first come, first serve, because if we have two qualified applicants, both of which we approve, how else are you supposed to decide between the two of them without discriminating in some way? So it has to be first come, first serve. And then when we communicate to someone that their application was approved, we would let them know, try to schedule with them to come into our office. And if they, didn't want to really pin down a time and day to come in, we'd let them know, okay, but if someone comes in prior, just so you know, you will not get the apartment. But when they came in, they would have to sign the lease. So oftentimes we would send them the lease prior to them coming in. Sometimes they would request to review it, in our office, which is fine. And the lease itself, I should say, will be a separate video because the lease in and of itself is its own topic. It's our lease at one point was 13 pages long. So it's a really important topic, but we'll cover that separately. So prior to them getting the keys, they would have to provide their security deposit. They would have to sign the lease. They would be charged rent as of the first day when the lease was starting. That we didn't charge first month's rent, last month's rent, anything like that. If they had pets and the property did permit pets, we would have them provide a pet deposit. That's a refundable pet deposit. And they would often pay pet rent. So the pet rent is obviously to cover wear and tear. Of course, if they had a doctor's note and they had proof that it was a support animal, then of course that you're not permitted to charge them a deposit or any pet rent for that because that is protected. So again, check with a legal professional on that. That's how we handled it. And then we would get them moved in. We would do a pre-walkthrough of the property before they were there, just to ensure its cleanliness, to ensure that it's in great shape. Then, of course, we would provide them with a move-in checklist that they would complete, and we would require them to return it to us by a specific date. You can see there's a possible pitfall, right? If you allow someone to hang on to a checklist, a move-in checklist for a month, a lot of that damage could have been from them. So we would give them the checklist, require them to, to get that back to us within a certain period of time, a very short period of time, for it to be accepted. And on our end, we would also video the pre-move-in condition of the property, and we would save it on our network, so that if there was ever a dispute down the road, when it came time for security deposit refund, we could at least reference that, provide them with a copy of that video, which is time and date stamped, to show them that, look, this was the documented condition. On the application, as part of the application process as well, there was a line that they would have to sign off on saying, I've viewed the property. I'm comfortable and accept its condition as is. All of these are just little protections you try to put in place in a court of law in this area. Absolutely no guarantees. What we've seen over the past, I would say, 7 to 8 years, is that judges typically tend to side with tenants. So yes, it's good to do your due diligence and to have everything documented, have tenants sign off on anything and everything that you can, have the video of everything, photos of everything. But bear in mind, when you get into a court, it's very likely that a judge may just default to siding with the tenant, regardless of the facts and the evidence provided. But you just do the best you can. And the one thing you want to really hit a home run on, if you don't do anything else, the place they're moving into must be clean. Tenants can typically be a little flexible if there's a minor maintenance issue, a loose doorknob, a door that sticks. Up here we have the Four Seasons, so it's not uncommon for doors to swell and become a challenge to open and close. They will absolutely not tolerate a dirty apartment. It has to be clean. You really should do a pre-move-in inspection yourself, so that if there's any dispute, you got your eyes on it as well, and that you can certify that you looked at it. But if you don't do anything else, you have to give them a clean apartment. I've just been astonished from what I've seen from some landlords and kind of how they hand over an apartment. If you don't hand it over clean, you've started that relationship off on a really bad foot. Now they're looking for everything. Now all of a sudden they're finding 5, 6, 7, 8 things wrong because you gave them something to look for. They already have a sour taste in their mouth because they moved into a dirty place and they have to clean it. Now they're really going to start looking, and that's going to be a slippery slope for you, because we have had people move in and we've had them come through with a series of complaints. And sometimes you just have to put your foot down at some point and let them know that, look, you accepted this property. I don't deem any of these conditions to be, impasses for us. I think that they're things that are, yes, we may take care of at some point, but they're certainly not critical. And they certainly don't hinder your ability to reside here. And you just have to put your foot down. Move-in checklist, for example, some tenants will treat that as a wish list, a list of things you're going to fix. And what I always tell them with the move-in checklist is, you're documenting the condition of this property to protect yourself. So that at the end of your lease, whether it's a year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now, whatever it may be, you have the move-in checklist that you provided that shows, hey, that screen was ripped. Hey, that scratch was in the hardwood floor when I moved in, right in the living room. That protects the tenant. It's not a wish list. It's not a honey-do list. It's not a list of things we're going to fix. It's just documenting the condition of a property to ensure that the tenant is protected. And it's the same thing with the video that you take, the pre-move-in video you take, right? It's documenting the condition of the apartment to protect the landlord. So that's the application process in a nutshell. We actually utilized management software, a couple of different products. They can be pricey. I understand if you're just a one-man show or a one-woman show and you're, have a single family that you're renting out to people, you wouldn't want to pay a monthly fee, for software. But, At the very least, you should have a piece of software that you use, whether it's web-based or what have you, to run credit. I strongly recommend doing credit and background because, what if they have, violent offenses? What if there are, what if they're on a list? I mean, you really need to know kind of who you're moving in. I mean, take for example an apartment complex. If you move in someone who has, a sexual misconduct, if you will, on their record, oftentimes you're required to notify every other tenant in that building, and some of them are going to want to leave, and they're not going to get much fight if they want to leave because there's potentially a sexual predator living in the apartment complex. You have to abide by that. So it's something to be aware of. Always run background, always run the credit, and just treat everyone equally. And it's a first come, first serve. And we'll continue with more videos, getting more specifically into the lease itself, some of the really important points to hit there, getting into just managing, tenants overall day-to-day sort of management of tenants, how to handle maintenance, as far as what constitutes a high priority or an emergency request, medium versus a low priority request. What are the most common issues that arise in an apartment? So stay tuned. More of those videos are coming, and they'll be named accordingly. Thank you.